Order.
I will take that on notice.
This is not being dealt with openly.
We would not want to complicate any investigation.
Have you had discussions with the clerk?
In relation to the alleged sexual assault in the ministerial wing, as a criminal investigation is now in progress, it is inappropriate for me to add anything further in this forum.
You're not going to answer any question at all about anything.
I'm attempting to be as full and frank as I can in this forum.
In an era in which question time has become known for, well, a lack of answers, Senate Estimates Committee hearings have come to be seen as the last hope for getting any real answers out of government about what is going on, particularly when it comes to things the government would rather not tell us about.
The scope of what you have claimed is beyond precedent of the Senate.
But today was something else. Citing police investigations, the government repeatedly closed down all avenues of questions about the Brittany Higgins investigation in 2 separate committees, grilling officials from the Department of the Senate, the Australian Federal Police, the Department of Parliamentary Services and the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. The most contentious exchange concerned what has become known as the Gaetjens inquiry. That is, the inquiry ordered by the Prime Minister, conducted by the Secretary of his department, to find out who in the Prime Minister's office knew what about the alleged rape on a ministerial couch of Brittany Higgins.
I want to know, and that's why I've asked the Secretary of my department to actually test that advice that I've received.
It is now a month since Phil Gaetjens began his inquiry, and last week the opposition was getting more and more restive about when we would get to see his findings.
This work is being done by the Secretary of my department. Now, he has not provided me with a further update about when I might expect that report, but I have no doubt the opposition will be able to ask questions of him in Senate estimates next week.
So it was a bit of a shock to senators today when Mr Gaetjens revealed his inquiry had been effectively parked for weeks.
On the 9th of March, the AFP Commissioner informed me it would be strongly advisable to hold off finalising the records of interviews with staff until the AFP could clarify whether the criminal investigation into Ms Higgins' sexual assault allegations may traverse any issues covered by the administrative process I was undertaking. As a result, I have put on hold the process of finalising documentation of my inquiries and the preparation of a report to the Prime Minister. I also told the Prime Minister of that.
So, the Prime Minister was told on March 9 that the inquiry was on ice, and then told Parliament just last week he'd had no update on timing. But that's not all. Just downstairs, the head of the Federal Police was giving evidence that didn't exactly gel with Mr Gaetjens' account.
Have you asked the Secretary to stall, pause or alter his investigation?
No.
You are making a decision here to cover up your inquiry, to pause your inquiry as a result of your own decision, not as a result of advice on the AFP.
I don't believe that's correct, Senator.
I think the evidence demonstrates that, Mr Gaetjens. We have the AFP Commissioner saying there's no reason why you would stop your inquiry. You are now telling us, I'm stopping the inquiry and I'm not answering any questions. That is entirely a political decision. It is not a legal or policing decision, and it is one you are making.
There were also questions in estimates hearings today about what the Prime Minister had been told about the allegations of an historical rape by the nation's first law officer, Attorney General Christian Porter, but with equally little information gained along the way. The wider shockwaves from all these events continue, with increasing questions about how tenable it is for Linda Reynolds, who should have been attending Senate estimates today but remains on sick leave until the end of the month, to continue as Defence Minister. But there are also other issues reflecting on Christian Porter's management of his portfolio. In early 2019, before the last federal election, the minority Morrison government faced a push for legislation from crossbench MPs to allow the evacuation to Australia of seriously ill detainees on Manus Island and Nauru. One of the arguments made by the government in the course of pushing back against this legislation was by Mr Porter as Attorney General, who repeatedly warned the government had official advice about the dangers of the legislation, which he said would stop detainees being returned to offshore detention, thereby effectively ending the scheme.
We sought and received advice from the Australian Government solicitor last evening. The essential content of that advice is that there is a very serious concern now. There is no lawful authority for the government to return medical transfers.
It was a humiliating defeat for the minority government when the Medevac bill was passed, despite these warnings from Mr Porter. After the Coalition's subsequent election victory and improvement in parliamentary numbers, the legislation was repealed. but the opposition lodged a Freedom of Information request to get access to that legal advice that had been cited by Mr Porter. And just last month, the Administrative Appeals Tribunal ruled some of the document should be released.
What we now know, having looked at the parts of the advice that have been released in accordance with the order of the tribunal, is that it simply didn't say what Mr Porter claimed it said.
These are the 7 heavily redacted pages of advice. The Justice found that Christian Porter had deployed the AGS advice to lend credibility to a political attack. Labor claims that nowhere does the released advice say anything about the government not having the power to send people who are transferred to Australia under the Medevac laws back to offshore detention.
The crux of this is that no Attorney-General of Australia should ever misrepresent advice that has been obtained. If you are going to go and get, using public money, legal advice on a very contentious political matter, then you've got a choice. You can properly represent what the advice says and better still release it, or you've got to stay silent about it.
But in a statement to 7:30 tonight, Acting Attorney-General Michaelia Cash said that while the matter was a complex one, nothing in what Justice McKerricker wrote contradicted the government's claim about the flaws in Labor's scheme, nor suggested the Attorney-General did anything to mislead the public on this matter.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
The growing questions of accountability are now dominating everything in federal parliament, just as the government's control over its own agenda is being more directly challenged. Today, the Prime Minister was compelled to say he would not stand in the way of a Royal Commission into veteran suicide, having resisted one for some time. But any chance of a focus on this important issue was being blown out of the water tonight by appalling revelations on Network 10 of solo sex acts by male Liberal staffers in female MPs' offices and prostitutes being brought into Parliament House. And, separately, on Four Corners tonight, the account of the female security guard who found Brittany Higgins in the Minister's office.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.